When I decided to move closer to downtown, I set my sights on a mid-rise condominium building perched just at the edge of an American city's busy core. Maplebrook Tower had everything I could want. A prime location near shops and parks, a spacious lobby with shiny marble floors, wide hallways that gave a sense of luxury, and a friendly doorman named Ramon who always greeted residents with a smile. The building rose about 15 stories high, each floor hosting 8 units. It wasn't a gleaming skyscraper, but it was tall enough to offer panoramic skyline views to the upper floors. On a sunny spring afternoon, I visited Maplebrook Tower for the first time, stepping into the airy lobby. The property manager, Vincent, gave me a tour. He pointed out the cozy lounge area by the front desk, the mailroom tucked near the elevator banks, and the manicured mini-garden in the back courtyard. "We keep everything in top shape," he said. "The residents here are mostly working professionals or retirees who appreciate convenience. You'll find it's a calm place. Though, of course, we have an active homeowners association that oversees rules and maintenance." At the mention of the HOA, I shrugged. The standard condo rules, like abiding by quiet hours or not placing doormats in the hallway, didn't bother me. I was used to typical guidelines. But as with any HOA, there was always the possibility of one or two particularly nosy or overzealous members. I brushed aside that thought, focusing on the bright, gleaming corridors. This was going to be my new home, a place of comfort and ease. I finalized the purchase and soon moved into a 10th-floor unit with large windows offering a partial city view. My unit was dog-friendly. Samson, my 11-year-old golden retriever, was part of the family. He'd been my loyal companion for a decade. Though his muzzle was whitening and his pace slower, he still managed gentle excitement whenever we explored new surroundings. Maplebrook Tower, with its elevator convenience, seemed ideal for an older dog who no longer managed stairs well. The day I moved in, the staff told me to use the large service elevator for my furniture. That was typical in many condos. But for daily usage, the building had 2 regular passenger elevators. One was near the main lobby, the other near the rear entrance. With everything set, Samson and I started our new chapter, riding the elevator each morning for walks at the park, returning to enjoy the comfortable high-rise life. I did not yet realize that behind the building's polished veneer, a certain individual was about to make my life, and the lives of every pet owner, far more complicated. Her name was Brenda Arnett, though behind closed doors, many neighbors called her Karen. Maplebrook Tower's HOA had a 5-person board, officially led by a pleasant man named Timothy, who seldom made waves. Another board member, Carla, handled finances. A retired judge named Walter sat on the board as well, mostly offering calm advice. Then there was a woman in her mid-50s with short, precisely styled hair, Brenda Karen Arnett, occupying the role of resident affairs liaison. According to the building's rumor mill, she had a habit of micromanaging everything from the color of blinds visible from the street to how many potted plants someone could place on their balcony. She was polite in a clipped, frosty way, but her condescending tone spoke volumes. Karen took her responsibilities to an extreme. She believed Maplebrook Tower should maintain pristine standards, meaning no stray scuff marks on walls, no hallway clutter, and definitely no messy activities that might degrade the building's elegance. Residents whispered stories of her scolding them for leaving grocery carts in the hallway for more than 5 minutes. She was the type who'd slip typed notes under doors or on bulletin boards, citing potential violations and referencing obscure bylaw sections. Initially, I only saw Karen in passing. She'd be crossing the lobby, clipboard in hand, checking for smudges or scrapes on the marble tiles. Her gaze would flick to me and Samson as we left for our walk, but she didn't say much, just an arched eyebrow. I didn't think much of it at first. Samson was quiet, well-trained, and never left a mess in the common areas. The building allowed pets, so presumably there was no issue, right? That assumption was naive. One day, after I'd settled in for about a month, the building circulated a typed notice in everyone's mailbox. The heading read, "Mandatory Pet Policy Update." It bore the official HOA letterhead, but at the bottom was signed by Brenda Arnett, Resident Affairs Liaison. My stomach knotted as I read the gist. To maintain cleanliness, all pets must be transported via the stairs or carried in a secure carrier to prevent soiling of the passenger elevators. It specifically singled out dogs and cats, who walk on leashes, stating they could no longer use the main passenger elevators. I blinked, rereading the lines. The explanation was that fur, dander, and potential accidents can degrade the elevator environment, which was unfair to other residents. The memo insisted that owners must either carry their animals or use the stairwell. Another paragraph mandated immediate compliance, with threatened fines for violators. My frustration mounted. Samson wasn't a puppy who could be easily carried, let alone up 10 flights of stairs. He was an aging, 65-pound golden retriever with arthritis. The entire reason I chose a building with an elevator was to spare him that difficulty. Forcing him up flights of stairs was borderline cruel. Seething, I asked around. Many other dog owners were also furious. Some with small dogs could use carriers, though they resented the inconvenience. Larger dog owners were in a bind. What do we do, lug them? That's impossible, complained one neighbor with a husky. Another neighbor with 2 cats found it less of a problem. She could carry her cats if needed, but still found the rule ridiculous. We suspected Karen was behind it, as the signature on the letter confirmed. Meanwhile, the board's president, Timothy, seemed to have let her push this measure through unchallenged. I resolved to challenge the rule, but I suspected it would be an uphill battle. Karen's rationale about clean elevators might seem plausible to some, so I prepared for a confrontation at the next HOA meeting. Meanwhile, my immediate problem was how to get Samson in and out of the building without incurring fines, and without making him climb all those stairs. That's where I hatched the plan involving the building's freight elevator. Like many multi-story condo buildings, Maplebrook Tower had a separate freight elevator, an industrial-style lift in the back, used primarily for moving large furniture, deliveries, and maintenance tasks. Typically, it wasn't available for everyday passenger use. But the new pet policy singled out the passenger elevators as off-limits for animals walking on a leash. It said nothing about the freight elevator. Possibly an oversight by Karen, or maybe she thought no one would bother. The day after the policy took effect, I read the building's official guidelines for the freight elevator. It stated, for use of large deliveries, move-in/outs, or maintenance tasks, residents must sign out the freight elevator for extended usage. Nowhere did it say pets were forbidden. The only mention was that it should not be used for general passenger traffic unless necessary. That was it, an open door for me. If I needed to, I could ride the freight elevator with Samson. Before I tried that route, I paid a visit to Ramon, the doorman, explaining my dilemma. He shook his head in sympathy. That new policy is a doozy. If your dog can't handle stairs, you might have to carry him. But obviously, that's not feasible. I nodded. Right. But what if I use the freight elevator? The rule only mentions the passenger elevators. He chuckled. True, it doesn't specifically ban pets from the freight elevator. Usually, we prefer it remain free for deliveries. But if you sign it out, or if it's not in use, I guess you can. Ms. Arnett might fuss, though. I grinned. She might, but I'll be in compliance with her letter, technically. Let's see how she likes that. So I started doing exactly that. Each time Samson and I needed to head out or come back, I'd pop around to the service corridor, ring the freight elevator, and ride it down. The cargo-sized lift was huge, enough to fit multiple pieces of furniture, so having me and my gentle golden retriever inside felt luxurious. We had ample space, and it was usually empty. On the rare occasion someone needed it for a move, I'd politely wait or coordinate. Overall, it was an inconvenience, but far less stressful than forcing Samson up the stairs. I half expected Karen to appear with a new rule banning pets from the freight elevator, but for the moment, she seemed not to realize what I was doing. Or maybe she was unaware of the loophole. Instead, I enjoyed a peaceful, private ride whenever Samson and I traveled. Freed from the hustle of the main passenger elevator, we had the entire big, industrial cage to ourselves. The big irony? The freight elevator was actually cleaner for Samson. No cramped corners or squeaky floors. In the meantime, a wave of resentment built among pet owners. Those who had smaller pets sometimes complied grudgingly, carrying them. Others quietly tried sneaking them in the passenger elevator, risking fines. I told them about the freight elevator trick, but a few found it too far out of the way. The building had only one freight elevator at the back, meaning a longer walk. Still, some with medium or large dogs decided to follow my lead. A small club of us began using the freight elevator, effectively turning it into our own private, albeit cargo-themed, ride. Sure enough, Karen eventually caught wind that some dog owners, myself especially, were bypassing her rule by using the freight elevator. One morning, as Samson and I strolled through the back corridor, we nearly bumped into Karen. She was accompanied by a maintenance staffer, presumably inspecting the loading dock area. Her eyes locked on us emerging from the freight elevator. She paused, lips pursed. "What are you doing back here?" I feigned innocence. "Oh, just taking Samson out for his morning walk. We can't use the passenger elevator with him, so we use the freight lift. That's allowed, right?" She frowned. "The freight elevator is for deliveries, not casual pet transport. This is an abuse of the building's facilities." I shrugged lightly. "Your pet policy only forbids the passenger elevator. It doesn't mention the freight elevator. The building's guidelines also don't ban pets from the freight elevator. So as far as I know, we're in compliance." She bristled, searching for a retort. The maintenance staffer, looking uneasy, mumbled something about, "We usually only use it for large loads," but said nothing to contradict me. Karen's eyes narrowed. "This is not the intended usage. I'll bring this up with the board. We might have to revise the policy further." I nodded politely. "Sure, let me know. Until then, Samson and I will keep using it." Then I walked off, heart pounding a bit from the confrontation, but also relishing the mild triumph. If she wanted a war, we'd see how far she'd push the board to accommodate her petty demands. That evening, I learned from the building's forum that Karen was indeed drafting a new rule to restrict freight elevator usage to official deliveries only. A neighbor posted the rumor, but I also saw pushback. Even some non-pet owners found the existing pet ban too harsh. The idea of banning them from the freight elevator too was seen as overkill. Some recognized that older dogs or large pets simply couldn't do the stairs. A swirl of debate erupted. Meanwhile, I carried on, waiting for the next official board meeting to voice my stance. The next monthly HOA meeting arrived, held in the building's community room. A sizable crowd turned up, many of them pet owners outraged by the new elevator ban or worried about further restrictions. The 5 board members took their seats at a long table. Karen sat in the middle, posture stiff, a stack of papers before her. Timothy, the president, welcomed everyone, running through minor agenda items first. Then came the main event, update on pet elevator policy. Karen took the floor. "Thank you, Timothy," she began in a clipped tone. "We enacted the current ban on pets using the passenger elevator for hygiene and courtesy reasons, but we've since discovered some residents are using the freight elevator as a workaround. This is not how we intended the policy to function. The freight elevator is for cargo, not everyday foot traffic, let alone animals." She flashed a tight smile. "Therefore, I propose we clarify our rules. The freight elevator is restricted to move-ins/outs, deliveries, or maintenance. Residents must coordinate usage with the front desk. Pets remain prohibited from the passenger elevator. They must be carried or use the stairwell. This ensures the building stays clean, preventing fur and dander from saturating the elevator cabins. I believe this is best for Maplebrook Tower's image." A rumble of discontent spread through the room. One resident exclaimed, "You want large dogs to climb 10 flights of stairs?" Another hissed, "This is inhumane." Karen tried to maintain composure. I raised my hand. When recognized, I stood. "Look, I understand wanting cleanliness, but punishing pet owners with an elevator ban is extreme. My dog, Samson, is elderly. He can't handle stairs, and I can't carry him. The only feasible solution was the freight elevator. If you ban that too, you're effectively discriminating against certain residents. We pay the same HOA fees as everyone else." Karen sniffed. "We're not discriminating. We're balancing the needs of all. Pets can cause odors or accidents, which we must prevent." I replied evenly. "Samson has never had an accident, nor do I see other dogs messing up the elevators. This is a hypothetical fear. Why not simply enforce a rule that owners must clean up if an accident occurs, rather than a blanket ban? Or require that dogs be well-groomed?" A wave of applause and nods followed. Another resident, Lucy, chimed in. "My cat is always in a carrier, but sometimes I have groceries too. Taking the stairs is a burden. The rule is too broad." Karen tried to talk over the growing dissatisfaction. "The building invests a lot in elevator maintenance. We can't risk a single incident soiling them for all." At that, Carla, the board member in charge of finances, cleared her throat. "Actually, Karen, the budget for cleaning the elevators is not that high. The occasional fur or minor scuff is within normal maintenance. We do the same for random spills or muddy shoes from humans. A single pet accident wouldn't bankrupt us. Perhaps we can find a compromise, like owners must place their dog on a mat or something. Karen's face hardened, but Timothy intervened. Let's calm down. We can see there's strong opposition to banning pets from both elevators. Perhaps the board can table this new restriction and revisit the original ban. We need a balanced approach. Karen tried a last-ditch protest, but the crowd's mood was clearly against her. Timothy concluded, "We'll take a formal vote at the next board session. For now, the passenger elevator ban remains, but we won't expand it to the freight elevator until the board decides. Let's end this discussion here." Relief washed over me. Karen's attempt to block the freight elevator usage was not an immediate success. We'd staved off further restrictions. The question remained whether we could overturn the passenger elevator ban itself. Either way, the freight elevator stayed open for the time being, letting me continue my routine with Samson. In the interim, life settled into a pattern. Each morning and evening, Samson and I strolled to the back corridor, keyed the freight elevator, and descended or ascended in solitary comfort. Sure, the metal walls looked industrial, and the overhead light flickered, but it was spacious. Rarely did we have to share it. Most residents either used the passenger elevator or the stairs, leaving the freight lift idle except for deliveries or moves. Some neighbors joked that I'd turned the freight elevator into my personal VIP ride. It was bigger, usually empty, and thus ironically more pleasant. I could hum a tune, let Samson stand comfortably, and not worry about crowds or stairs. If anything, Karen's ban had granted me a strange upgrade. Freed from waiting behind lines of people in the passenger elevator, I rarely encountered delays. Meanwhile, those who used the main elevators sometimes faced congestion during rush hour. I began to appreciate the humor. Karen's rule, intended to inconvenience me, backfired by giving me an underused, spacious alternative. Of course, the building staff sometimes noticed. Ramon, the doorman, teased me about the VIP freight service. I'd grin, replying that Karen's rules forced me to find creative solutions. "At least it's not illegal," he'd say. Exactly. The main question was how long Karen would stand by and watch me enjoy this loophole. In fact, rumors circulated that she was furious seeing me waltz in and out the freight entrance with Samson, effectively mocking the passenger elevator ban. Another resident said Karen had complained about excessive usage of the freight elevator, but the maintenance staff confirmed I wasn't harming it. I scheduled no big moves, never blocked it, and only spent about a minute traveling up or down. So no grounds to accuse me of misuse. Still, the next major board meeting, set a month away, loomed as a potential flashpoint. Pet owners were mobilizing, urging the board to repeal the passenger elevator ban altogether. Meanwhile, Karen presumably prepared more justifications. The question was which side would the board ultimately favor? As the date for the next board meeting approached, a group of concerned pet owners, myself included, decided to unify. We started an informal pet advocacy committee, collecting signatures from residents who believed the passenger elevator ban was excessive. A neighbor named Alicia wrote a heartfelt letter describing how her back surgery made climbing stairs painful, and carrying her cat in a carrier plus groceries was nearly impossible. Another neighbor recounted how their large breed dog had hip dysplasia, making stairs dangerous. We gathered a significant list of testimonies. Carla, the finance board member who'd hinted at compromise, quietly hinted that if we presented a strong, reasoned argument, we might sway the majority. After all, the only truly vocal champion of the ban was Karen. Timothy, the president, was typically non-confrontational but seemed open to reversing policies if enough residents wanted it. Meanwhile, Karen didn't rest. She posted new signs in the lobby about maintain elevator cleanliness, report any pet incidents. She even started encouraging neighbors to photograph any fur or drool they found in the elevator, as if building a case. The building's forum heated up with debates, some siding with Karen, claiming they disliked animals near them in enclosed spaces. But from what I saw, the majority felt banning leashed pets was overkill. Many pointed out that if you're allergic or uncomfortable, you could simply wait for the next elevator or share the ride briefly. We all lived in a shared environment. No one group's preference should overshadow everyone else's rights. I continued my daily routine with Samson, using the freight elevator, collecting stories from neighbors who faced real hardship due to the ban. My personal vendetta with Karen wasn't the main driving force. I truly wanted the building's rules to be fair and inclusive. By the time the board meeting arrived, we had a petition with over 70 signatures urging them to allow pets back in passenger elevators, perhaps with a basic courtesy code, like leashes, wiping paws if muddy, etc. The night of the meeting, the community room was packed. More residents showed up than usual, many of them with the petition in hand. The board took their seats, scanning the crowd. Karen exuded tense energy, stacks of notes in front of her. She gave a polite but tight-lipped smile to the room. Timothy opened the floor with standard housekeeping, then introduced the main item, proposal to reevaluate pet elevator restrictions. Karen spoke first, rehashing her claims. We must preserve a clean, odor-free environment. Some residents are allergic or fearful. It's simpler to keep the passenger elevators pet-free, ensuring no conflicts or hygiene issues. The freight elevator or stairs remain options. This policy is working well. I stepped up to the microphone next, flanked by Alicia and others from the newly formed pet advocacy group. With all due respect, it's not working well for many. Large dogs or older pets can't manage stairs. People with physical limitations can't carry them. The freight elevator is one workaround, but it's inconvenient for some floors, and it was never intended to be the sole path for everyday usage. We've gathered extensive support. Here are 70 signatures from fellow residents. I handed the petition to Timothy, who skimmed it, eyebrows raised at the volume of names. Alicia then described her back issues, painting a vivid picture of the difficulty in carrying her cat, plus other items. Another speaker, Robert, who had a Great Dane, said, "My dog is gentle, well-behaved, and never had an accident. The ban punishes us for a potential problem that rarely, if ever, happens." Karen tried to counter. We have data showing that, prior to the ban, there were at least 2 reported incidents of dogs shedding excessively or drooling in the elevators. Residents complained about fur stuck on the walls. It's not theoretical. Carla responded. Yes, but those are minor housekeeping matters. We clean floors anyway, and we have no record of any real damage or repeated incidents. Are we punishing an entire group for a rare event? Karen stiffened. It's about principle. Non-pet owners shouldn't share close quarters with animals if they choose not to. The ban ensures everyone's comfort. A new voice cut in from the audience. Ms. Delgado, an older lady with no pets. She surprised me by saying, "I dislike dogs, but this ban goes too far. There's plenty of daily elevator traffic with strollers, bikes, groceries. We all share the space. Why single out pets? If a dog's well-mannered, I can tolerate a 30-second ride." Applause rippled through the crowd. Timothy signaled for calm. It seems the building strongly favors reconsidering the ban. The question is, do we keep it, modify it, or repeal it altogether? Karen tried one last angle, referencing safety concerns. Some people fear large dogs might be unpredictable in close quarters. This ban protects them from anxiety. Walter, the retired judge on the board, finally spoke up. We can't ban an entire category of residents' rights because some might feel anxious. If an issue arises, it can be handled case by case. That's the usual approach. This blanket prohibition is overly broad. Realizing the tide had turned, Karen's expression grew stormy. Timothy suggested a formal vote among the 5 board members right then. The result was 4-1 in favor of repealing the passenger elevator ban. Karen cast the lone no. He then proposed we adopt basic guidelines. Keep pets leashed, owners must clean up any accidents, etc. The audience broke into cheers, relief flooding the room. Karen sat rigid, forced to accept the outcome. With that vote, the dreaded passenger elevator ban ended. An official notice went out the next day stating, effective immediately, leashed pets may again ride the passenger elevators. Owners are responsible for cleanliness and courtesy. Freight elevator use remains optional, but is no longer mandatory for pets. The building collectively rejoiced. Dog owners, cat owners, and even some who had exotic pets were thrilled to see reason prevail. I felt triumphant, not just for my personal convenience, but because the building had stood up to Karen's overreach. Many neighbors thanked me for leading the pushback. I reminded them it was a group effort. Our petition, Alicia's testimony, and the support from multiple floors all contributed to swaying the board. Ironically, my private ride in the freight elevator was no longer essential. However, I'd grown used to the hassle-free emptiness of that big cargo lift. Sometimes I still used it if the passenger elevator was crowded. But now Samson and I also enjoyed the normal route. On days I had groceries or was in a rush, it was nice to walk into the front elevator, greet neighbors, and ascend to the 10th floor without a second thought. The tension of possibly incurring a fine was gone. Meanwhile, Karen's frustration was palpable. She'd lost a major power struggle. The building discovered that if enough residents united, her rules could be overturned. She sulked around the lobby, no longer so quick to impose arbitrary measures. Though she remained on the board, her credibility took a hit. People teased her behind her back, calling her the dog elevator lady. She tried to salvage her dignity by focusing on other issues, but for a while, everything she proposed faced more scrutiny. Nevertheless, Maplebrook Tower felt freer. The overshadowing fear of petty regulations gave way to a more balanced environment. Pet owners, still mindful of courtesy, cleaned up after themselves, ensuring no new controversies. The passenger elevators didn't turn into a fur-ridden chaos as Karen had predicted. Life rolled on smoothly. Though the ban was repealed, Karen didn't fully abandon her crusade. A few weeks later, she placed official-looking elevator courtesy guidelines pamphlets in the mailroom, urging pet owners to muzzle large dogs or carry them if possible. It wasn't a ban, but more of a forceful suggestion. She included references to potential fines for excessive fur shedding or drooling. Most residents scoffed, ignoring the pamphlet. The board had not approved any muzzle rule, and the existing resolution allowed pets as long as they were leashed. Karen also scoured the security camera footage, presumably trying to catch a dog misbehaving in the elevator. She once confronted me, claiming Samson left muddy paw prints, but I calmly pointed out they were from my wet sneakers after a rain. Another time, she scolded a neighbor with a husky for excess shedding. The neighbor demanded proof, and Karen had none. These petty acts only eroded her standing further. To me, each attempt felt like a last, desperate effort to reassert authority. Meanwhile, the building's day-to-day harmony improved. Pet owners felt comfortable again. Non-pet owners got used to occasionally sharing an elevator ride with a furry companion. The doorman, Ramon, noticed fewer arguments in the lobby. Even the housekeeping staff said they saw no spike in elevator mess. In other words, Karen's dire predictions were groundless. Over the next few months, the building enjoyed a renewed sense of unity. Freed from the ban, I discovered I actually liked chatting with neighbors in the passenger elevator while Samson wagged his tail. Some residents who had never interacted with me before asked about him, giving him gentle pats. He, in turn, brightened their day with his calm presence. The simple act of letting a dog ride an elevator had ironically built more community spirit than any official social hour event. Occasionally, I still used the freight elevator out of habit when I wanted more space or privacy. It felt nostalgic. The difference now was I chose it, not because I was forced. My private ride was an option, not a necessity. I smiled each time I recalled how Karen's original ban had inadvertently introduced me to that hidden convenience. The best part? She had no justification to stop me from using it still if I wanted. As for Karen, the final twist came when she found herself needing to rely on the kindness of other residents, particularly pet owners, one morning in the elevator. It happened that she was carrying a heavy box of files for an HOA project. The box started slipping from her grasp. Another resident, a dog owner named Melissa, immediately helped her steady the box. Meanwhile, Melissa's lab quietly stood next to them, calm and unmoving. Karen realized then that the presence of a dog in the elevator didn't harm her or the building. The gentle assistance from a dog person displayed the very courtesy she had argued was lacking. According to hallway gossip, Karen managed a stiff thank you, perhaps a small crack in her prejudice. That story circulated, prompting mild amusement. While Karen didn't publicly renounce her stance, some said she softened ever so slightly, no longer complaining as loudly when crossing paths with leashed pets in the elevator. She'd simply keep a distance or occasionally shift to the other side, but that was it. In the grand scheme of Maplebrook Tower's history, The fiasco with Karen's elevator ban was brief but memorable. It showcased how one person's overreach could disrupt the building's harmony, and how collective pushback could restore fairness. Residents recognized that we had the power to shape our living environment. Meanwhile, Karen learned that even her official capacity had limits. For me, the experience was an affirmation of resilience and resourcefulness. When confronted with an unjust rule, I found a loophole, the freight elevator, that ironically gave me a more spacious, almost luxurious daily routine. And by rallying neighbors, we overturned the ban altogether. Samson, my dear golden retriever, lived out his twilight years without being forced to climb countless stairs or being carried like a sack of flour. In the final months of his life, he comfortably padded into the passenger elevator, wagging his tail at new faces, occasionally brightening someone's day. That alone made the struggle worthwhile. As time passed, new controversies emerged, like disputes over balcony decor or pool hours, but none matched the intensity of the pet elevator war. My story became a small legend. The time Karen banned pets from the elevator, so we used the freight lift and effectively had a private ride until the ban got scrapped. Residents still chuckle about it at building gatherings. Ultimately, the building is better off for the policy's demise. We remain courteous to each other, mindful to keep the elevators tidy, but also free to travel with our four-legged companions like normal human beings. The sense of tension around the lobby has lifted. Even Karen, though still occasionally meddlesome, rarely fights battles she's doomed to lose. And so it ends. What started as an outrageous ban on pets in the passenger elevator culminated in an improbable scenario. I discovered the comfort of the freight elevator and turned it into my personal traveling lounge, ironically circumventing Karen's intent. The HOA eventually realized the ban was unjust, and we collectively restored normalcy to Maplebrook Tower. In that final victory, we see a happy resolution. Good sense and neighborly unity triumphed over one woman's petty rule, ensuring that dog lovers, cat lovers, and elevator lovers can peacefully coexist in their tall, shared home.